Joining me now to discuss this and more is Nationals leader David Littleproud. David, thank you so much for joining me. Let's start with this meeting between Donald Trump and Kevin Rudd. All we know is that it happened at Trump's golf club in Florida in the dining room. We don't know what was discussed, David. The Prime Minister has blamed the coalition for asking questions, but given Anthony Albanese still doesn't have a meeting with Trump or a deal on tariffs, surely it is valid to ask questions.
Yeah, look, it's nothing more than a desperate diversion from the Prime Minister that has nothing to be proud of. The Trump administration has given very, very clear cues about trade, about AUKUS and much more. And if the Prime Minister hasn't understood the importance and urgency of himself having a meeting, not necessarily just the ambassador having a chance meeting, but actually himself getting to the White House, like many other world leaders have managed to do, to be able to prosecute a compelling case that Australia has got better than anyone else in the world. We just dropped a cheque for $800 million for our first instalment on Virginia-class submarines. And I suspect the fact that we're only learning about Ambassador Rudd's chance meeting with President Trump is because there's nothing to report. There was no progress and there was nothing substantive to that meeting, which shows that the Prime Minister has been asleep at the wheel. He's missed the opportunity. He hasn't taken up the cues that the Trump administration has been very clear to Australia and to the rest of the world. And the fact that he hasn't found himself on a plane to Washington means that Australians are missing out, whether that be just with the flat tariff, but also in terms of aluminium steel that came into effect in April, and now $2.2 billion worth of pharmaceuticals being hit with a tariff as well. This is going to cost Australian jobs, and we should be leveraging our position with President Trump in a proactive way. They are a strategic partner. And when you see today also, I think it's important to put into context, the Foreign Minister Wong talking about the strategic threat of China, that why wouldn't the Prime Minister be over there when at the moment we're relying on Virgin pilots to identify Chinese ships in our waters doing live fire exercises? Why wouldn't you have found yourself in the White House, not just about trade, but also about the strategic partnership that's more than just submarines? It's about making sure we send very strong signals until we can defend ourselves.
Well, actually, I want to ask you about those comments from Penny Wong. They were made at a conference in Malaysia, and she has expressed alarm at the, quote, pace of China's nuclear and conventional military build-up. This is what she said when she expanded on those comments last night.
I talked about the importance of a region where no country dominates and no country is dominated, a region where, as I described it, there is a balance of power, which of course requires continued US engagement.
David, is she right? And also you've got to wonder why the Prime Minister can't bring himself to be strong on China.
Exactly. Penny Wong is right, and we've got to understand you don't send warships into international waters and doing live fire exercises without wanting to send a message. A message has been sent, and when you're relying on Virgin pilots to identify them in our waters, and when we can clearly see that the Labor Party has reduced defence spending, we can't defend ourselves. We actually need strategic partnerships like AUKUS with the United States that give us the capacity to be able to send very strong messages that if someone wants to break that peace and tranquility that we have in the region, then there will be consequences because those partnerships, those strategic partnerships are strong. And that also means that we have to lift our defence spending. He made that very clear to NATO countries straight after his inauguration, saying that he's prepared to be a good citizen, being there to keep peace in regions, and particularly in Europe, but he's not going to do all the heavy lifting. I don't think President Trump's asking for anything outrageous. If we want to defend our own region, we have to increase our strategic defence spending with the hardware that the United States has, but we need that partnership. And again, the Prime Minister hasn't taken these cues that the Trump administration's been very direct with the Australians, but all the strategic partners the US has, is that you've got to do your heavy lifting, you've got to be part of this, and the fact that the Prime Minister hasn't found himself in Washington has shown that he's given subtle messages back through his speeches that we're not going to be subservient. This isn't about being subservient. This is about being in a partnership with the United States to defend ourselves, to make sure that we send those strong messages that hopefully we never have to use the line strong arm of those military assets to defend ourselves. But we can't do that at the moment unless we increase our spending and the Prime Minister shows some leadership, gets to Washington, shows the importance and urgency of re-establishing that partnership. And if we haven't got the right people doing that in Washington, then we should also be courageous enough to have that conversation to make sure the personnel in Washington that are dealing with the Trump administration can put Australia's best interests at heart and get that advancement. It is about Team Australia. Prime Minister is right on that, but he's got to be upfront, he's got to be honest, and he's got to understand the importance and urgency of him playing a role in it as well, and anyone else that needs to in Washington as well.
Absolutely. I mean, America is our closest ally, and for the first time in a very long time, this relationship is on edge. David Littleproud, it's been good to see you. Thanks very much for joining me on the show this evening. Appreciate it.